Felt really good outside today.
Yeah, it's nice out there.
Feels like spring, which is sort of what we expect out of the end of February here.
Yeah. I mean, this would have been full summer in Portland when I lived there last. Like, if you got days like this in June, you would be feeling pretty good.
It's Transfiguration Sunday, which is, I associate that with spring.
I don't even know what that is.
So...
There's too many whatever.
Well, you think there are too many feast days of the High Holy One Catholic and Apostolic Church?
That's actually not even what you are.
To be fair, this is not... If you Google, like, Transfiguration date in Google, it'll give you, like, August date, because the Catholics do it in August. But I think it makes more sense that the Protestants do it. It's the last Sunday before Lent, Transfiguration Sunday. It's when Jesus went up on the mountaintop with, I don't know, 2 of his disciples. I don't know who they were. James, is that one? John, probably John. Anyway, he went up there with a couple of his disciples. They like built shrines to Elijah and Moses,
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Anyway, they built some shrines, and then Jesus was transfigured in front of them.
Into what? How so?
He was yassified. Are you familiar with the practice of yassification?
Why don't you explain it to
me? Someone's yassified in modern internet parlance if, like, you use, what is it, like Face app? You use like one of those apps Facetune, where you like over filter your own face so it looks like you're wearing a ton of makeup and your jawbone is like sharper and your cheekbones are better.
That's when he became Chad Jesus.
Right, he became Chad Jesus. He was bathed in...
Chad Jesus is the offspring of Chad Mary.
Yeah, right.
There's Virgin Mary and Chad Mary.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, he was bathed and he became like white and glistening.
Wait, that's when Jesus turned white?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's right. But anyway, he was rejuvenated, I guess, in that moment. He was transfigured into some glowing, shining white guy. I don't know, the sort of the reminds me of the transformation into springtime.
All right, happy White Jesus Day.
Happy White Jesus Day. Happy Feast of the Yassification of Christ. Speaking of notable figures who are without sin, I have a Gerald Stratford update.
Oh, great.
Gerald Stratford posted, and now I usually don't get political, but... And then I was like, oh no, Gerald Stratford's about to milkshake duck himself. This is where we learn that Gerald Stratford is a TERF or something like that. Like, apparently is very trendy in England at this point. But no, he simply said, I don't usually get political, but I support Ukraine. And he didn't even say I support, he said, I hear that either like the national flower of Ukraine or that Ukrainians love giant sunflowers. So here are some giant sunflowers. And then he posted some big veg, some giant sunflowers. I thought that was pretty cute.
Good job, Gerald Stratford.
Yeah. So World War...
Stan a legend.
So World War III, baby. We doing it?
I certainly hope not.
We're recording this on Sundays. You know when it is.
You just said, which everyone knows when Transfiguration Sunday is.
Yeah. So it's that Sunday.
It's the last Sunday in February.
This year, yeah. It's a movable feast, of course. But
that's what today is.
That is what today is, the last Sunday in February. So we don't know by the time this comes on Friday if, what new horrors will unfold.
I mean, it's
the amount of times
quickly.
We've recorded a podcast and said, between now and Friday, we don't know what new horrors will unfold. It's
almost always true.
It's almost always true. It's really something. But yeah, I guess we're doing some World War again.
You're Roman.
And you are Allison. And this podcast is Seedy Business. Allison, if you were to yassify the podcast Seedy Business, would you give us big boobs or a big butt?
Isn't Seedy Business already yassified?
I don't know.
Chad podcast.
It's Seedy Business. It's Seedy Business. Here it is beautiful. It's probably 81 degrees and sunny and breezy out right now. Perfect day in Florida. Allison, what is going on in the garden?
Then let us cultivate our garden. It's the only way to make life endurable.
What's in the garden?
Well, all those greens in the big black tub are continuing to come up.
When can I eat them with my mouth?
I'm hoping that we can get some thinnings for a first salad maybe in a week or so.
Those first tender shoots that the first salad of the year is big. From tender stem hath sprung.
And let's see, I moved the hibiscus back to the backyard.
Yeah, you've been playing some sort of musical chairs with the hibiscus a little bit.
I'm trying to find a spot that gives it whatever the amount of sunlight that will make it the happiest is. I think we need to repot it pretty urgently. I got a little bit of a slow release flower fertilizer to do that, but haven't gotten around to actually repotting it yet. I mean, I want to repot it when it seems like it's not stressed out.
Yeah. Do we have a pot that's sufficient for it?
We might have one because there's some pots in the backyard that have some stuff in them, but we might not want.
That is dead.
Yeah. Well,
those tomato pots from.
But the tomato pot is much bigger than I think what we want the hibiscus to have. We had 2 pots with peppers that have survived for several years, but we did have a pot with some herbs that I think have all died, so maybe that will become a hibiscus pot. Anyway, we don't need to talk about this on the air necessarily, but that's coming up. We still have not pruned the dead wood off of the kumquat tree, but there's some new leaves coming in, like below the dead spot. So that is confirming for me that we really should consider that dead wood to be dead and probably trim it.
We had our big harvest of the kumquats, but, it left behind, 8 or 10.
Second crop. Yeah.
Yeah, 8 or 10 second crop kumquats, which are now pretty ripe. I popped one off and ate one yesterday, and it was the tastiest one I've had. The sweetest, best one I've had so far.
They're looking really beautiful right now. Like they're a true orange. I think even the first crop, we harvested them because it was clear they were starting to fall off.
Yeah.
But many of them were still a little bit green.
Yeah.
But now these are truly
real ripe.
orange.
Yeah, real sweet and good. Yeah, maybe I'll eat another one today.
And then our house plant had some bugs in it that I think we need to investigate a little further.
Yeah. Well, we discovered that. So the houseplant it's sitting on a crate near a front window. We have 2 fairly large front windows. And I discovered last weekend that each of the front windowsills were covered in tiny bugs. And I didn't put together they might have originated at the plant at that point.
I don't know if they did originate there. They might have just some of them might have just enjoyed being there. Yeah.
But so I sort of wiped them off the windowsill and they reemerged on the windowsill. Then I wiped them off again and they have not reemerged at this point. But yeah, I think we do need to maybe put down some diatomaceous earth in the house plant. And we pruned a couple of the dead things off of the house plant. It still looks pretty good. It's not dead. We've had it for a bunch of months now, and it's not dead. So that's something.
Yeah.
Okay, so the catalog we're going to look at today was unexpectedly and generously sent to us by our friend Kim, who lives in Portland. Kim is singularly the most thoughtful person that I've ever met. I don't know if she'll be embarrassed if she listens to that and hears this, but it's just quite simply true.
Yeah, it's quite a treat to know Kim and have her in my life.
Yeah. She very thoughtfully sent us a catalog. It is a vintage catalog. It is the 1945 Schell's Quality Seeds catalog, which is a brand that I did not know about prior to this point. I was able to find a PDF version of the catalog also on the Biodiversity Library website, as we've linked to a number of times. It's a great resource. So Allison is looking at the physical catalog. It was sent to us by Kim, and I'm looking at the PDF catalog. The reason we haven't heard of it is because it ceased production in 1972, as it turns out, but not for the reason that so many of our other catalogs have ceased production, which is they were bought out by some multinational conglomerate or whatever and repurposed. But this company closed up shop in 1972 because Tropical Storm Agnes, which I guess hit at least, I don't know what its full range was, but hit Harrisburg, Pennsylvania in 1972, and it flooded their warehouse. So unfortunately, they were felled by a natural disaster, as it turns out. But yeah, they were founded by a gentleman by the name Walter S. Schell out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania in 1910. They moved into the building to the warehouse that I noted was destroyed in 1972. In 1920, that's when the business really started taking off. But I did find their first catalog from 1910 on the Biodiversity Library, which was published as Walter S. Schell's Quality Seeds. Now it is, by 1945, we're looking at Schell's Quality Seeds. I'll read you his little introductory letter in his first catalog, which I think is nice. It reads, "A few words to my friends. For more than 10 years, I was with Holmes Seed Company." So I guess he began as an employee of Holmes Seed Company, started in presumably the year 1900, worked for them for 10 years. And he goes on, "And during that time, it was a pleasure for me to serve you. I tried always to be worthy of the confidence you displayed in me, and in presenting to you this, my first little catalog," put little in quotes, "announcing the beginning of my own seed business, I do so believe your confidence will mean your patronage. I will endeavor to serve you in an entirely satisfactory way. The quality of my seeds. Being in close touch with you who grow for market, I am able to appreciate just what it means to have good seeds, and it is with some pride that I offer you now, and will always hereafter, the highest quality seeds, absolutely the best, direct from the farms of the best growers to myself, thus overcoming any possibility of errors, and making sure that you get new crop seed, not old seed. New seed and old seed, good seed and bad seed, when put side by side, look very much alike. It is almost impossible to tell the one from the other by appearance. Hence, to know you are getting new crop seed and the best seed, you must have confidence in the man to whom you entrust your order, that he will give you nothing but the best. It is my purpose to prove myself worthy of such confidence. May I have your order?" So I thought that was pretty cute. The very idea that a person would work with a company for 10 years and then start their own company, like it's really a lost... Like, can you imagine someone working as a barista in Starbucks for 10 years and then starting their own coffee shop now? That sort of upward mobility, I feel like, just doesn't happen now. You get a job and then you're stuck at that place.
At the very least, it's not like being employed in a particular kind of business is a way that people gain skills and information that would allow them to start a business of their own.
Yeah. I mean, this is sort of a remnant of the apprenticeship system or something. Yeah, and so he mentioned that he started with the Holmes Seed Company. Looks like there is a Holmes Seed Company that still exists. It's out of Ohio now. I tried to dig a little bit into them. I ordered their catalog, so maybe we'll get their catalog at some point. But I don't know if it is the same Holmes Seed Company. It seems like it probably would be, but if it is, they don't trace their lineage in any way back to this point. So I looked around for early mention of Schell's Quality Seeds. The earliest primary source mention that I found of Schell's Quality Seeds was from 1920, and it was in a Boy's Life catalog. Do you know what that is?
Isn't it like, well, wait, it's a catalog? It's not a magazine?
No, it's a magazine. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, I thought it was like a sort of old-fashioned, highlights
Yeah.
type.
It is that type.
But back when the type of projects they would advise children do involved like setting things on fire or whatever.
Absolutely. So is it for Boy Scouts? It's like a Boy Scouts catalog. And what I found was an ad in Boy's Life, this Boy Scouts catalog, that says, "Boys, read this." And the ad reads, "You and every other boy in America can earn cash or Boy Scout equipment by selling Schell's quality seeds. Almost everybody with a garden will buy them. Register now to begin selling January 1st. No money required. I furnish you with the seeds. Write for particulars at once." So I guess it's fucking selling Girl Scout cookies, but you're selling Schell's quality seeds to get I don't know, coupons to get a pocket knife from Boys Life magazine, basically.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is sort of a sidebar, but I did go through the 1920 December edition of the Boys Life magazine to see what it was like, this Boy Scout magazine. And first of all, it's long. It's a big magazine. Second of all, I've never seen so many advertisements for bicycles and pocket knives in my entire life. Third of all, it is full of long-form short stories, like short stories that are thousands of words long about adventure. Stuff that, this is really, I was interested in seeing what sort of modern, I guess this wouldn't have been for boomers. It would have been for the silent generation, maybe. But what American ideas about masculinity were reflected in or defined by this magazine. There's a lot of stories about hunting in it, but they're long short stories that are in this. There's one in this. There's one in this called "The Prayer Rugs."
Okay.
And it's a story about I didn't read every word of it, but I did skim it. It appears to be a story about a caravan of Muslims who are bringing these prayer rugs to Mecca on a pilgrimage. So do you think that it treats Islam with respect and curiosity?
Yeah, I'm sure.
No, the punchline of this is that these prayer rugs contain a secret, when you sort of view them in totality, they contain a secret plan for
what?
A secret. They detail a secret plan for taking over the white world.
Wow. Damn.
Yeah, it's really something. They should. I'll also note that they do introduce sort of apolitically concepts about they teach you about Ramadan in this, which they refer to as Islamic Lent.
Okay, sure.
Or to be fair, Mohammedan Lent is how they term it. But the idea that Ramadan is like Lent, that's how kids are being taught about it at that point. Boy, it's no wonder we're really fucked up as a country, I've got to say. Anyway, Boy's Life. Check it out. All right, Allison, you've got the physical catalog in front of you.
I do.
What's it like?
All right, well, the cover, I think, is a sign of the times in which it was published, which, as you said, is 1945. And so the front cover depicts 3 rosy-cheeked white women doing a sort of Rosie the Riveter type, they're gathering in the green bean crop. And you've got a real sense that they're part of the war effort here.
Will you read the caption for this picture? It's a full cover picture, but then there's a caption at the bottom for it.
Here is another outstanding evidence of the fact that it does pay to plant Schell's strain of purebred, disease-free, high-yielding, bountiful beans. A 50-acre crop grown by one of our customers. Every plant perfect, not a blemish, and loaded with big, beautiful beans, which brought top prices. These lovely college girls and 50 more did a very patriotic service in helping to harvest this great crop.
So they got 53 hot college girls to pick beans. Before we continue talking about the cover, do you want to read the description for
Big bountiful
Schell's
beans.
Big Bountiful Beans? Yeah.
Schell's Strain Green Bountiful. The earliest and best in quality and heaviest in yield of all the flat, stringless podded varieties. The plants are loaded with pods. It is wonderfully prolific. It is ready to pick in 42 to 46 days from planting here in Pennsylvania. The pods, averaging 7 inches long, are of excellent quality, brittle, stringless, and quite meaty.
I've never seen brittle used positively in any context before.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they mean by that, actually.
Maybe like snappable?
Crisp.
Crisp, yeah. Crisp and snappable beans. Brittle. Yeah, that's interesting. All right, well, back to the design though. So how do you think this? So we think this was colorized after the fact.
Yeah, this is
For
definitely a colorized black and white photo.
I don't know anything about that practice. Do you know how that was done?
Well, in this case, you can see some evidence that there's some tracing lines around the figures that you can see particularly, for example, near their hair. So what I imagine is that someone had a print of the black and white photograph and then created red, yellow, and blue layers by tracing portions of the photograph and coloring those in where they wanted those inks to go. I wish I had a magnifying glass because there's actually some texture on the color. Give me a minute here.
Well, why don't you come over here? I'll cut this part out of you coming over here, but I can zoom in quite a lot on the PDF.
Well, of the many things I don't know much about, 1945 catalog printing processes is certainly one of them.
Yeah.
But there's sort of a texture on the colored. I mean, they didn't leave any of this particular photograph black and white, but I wonder if it was a screen print overlaid on top of the photograph. Because you can see sort of circles and dots in a very regular pattern.
Yeah. That's a nice cover. There's a banner at the top, a blue banner that says Schell's Quality Seeds, 1945, Market Gardeners Catalog. Their tagline, which they look to have retained throughout their entire run, is, "They grow better, they yield better." Do you want to read some of the inside cover, the passage titled "Millions of Tons More Food Required This Year"? Sort of their war blurb.
Great. Millions of tons more food required this year. Friends, consider the enormous quantities of food we, here in the United States, must grow this year, 1945, for ourselves and our millions of men in our Army, Navy, and Air Force all over the world, and the millions of starving people in all the countries we are freeing from the enemy. Millions and millions more tons of food must be provided this year than last year, and it must all be grown first. Let us all do our very best and plant all that we can take care of and pray that God will give us abundant crops so we can feed the starving peoples. For without these great food crops, there could be great tragedy, chaos, and even anarchy in the world. That would be worse than war. The supply of seeds for 1945. The seed requirements to produce all the food needed at home and abroad will be tremendous. Many seeds are again in short supply due to unfavorable growing weather. Therefore, you will be acting wisely by sending us your entire order for your year's supply while we have them for you. Plant your victory garden again. It should be as large as you can take care of so you can grow sufficient vegetables for your entire family for all summer and fall, and enough extra to can and store for winter. At least 125 quarts of vegetables and fruits for each member of your family will be needed.
Wow, the USDA would love it if we each consumed 125 quarts of fruits and vegetables.
They obviously wouldn't love that, or else they would subsidize farmers who grow real fresh crops instead of corn.
Corn and only corn.
Only corn, always corn.
Yeah. Do you think they would like it if we each drank 125 quarts of corn oil each year?
And corn sugar.
Syrup? Yeah. Wow.
Corn printer go burr. That's the USDA.
Wow, you're pretty hip with these.
Oh, yeah. Very cool.
You know all the sayings now, though, I think.
I didn't quite finish.
Yeah, continue.
Yeah. Market gardeners, grow all the vegetables your farm will produce. City families will need and buy all you can grow for them, for they urgently need more vegetables. Farmers, you should by all means have a full acre or two or more of vegetable crops for your own family and for canning and storing for winter. Don't be caught short of food. It could happen. And grow more for market also. Be sure of success. This you can do by planting all Schell's quality seeds, for they grow better and they yield better. That is why they are preferred by successful gardeners and farmers everywhere. Send your entire order to us and get the following big discounts.
And there are a bunch of special discounts where if you order a certain amount, you can deduct some percent off your order.
The idea that you would yourself sit down with a calculator and deduct 6% from your order, and you'd fill out this paper form, and then you'd put it in an envelope with cash and mail it to this company is pretty incredible. That's just not how we do commerce now.
Absolutely. So what do you think about the internal makeup of this catalog design-wise? Or I'm interested in I think are 3 different paper types used in this. So there are lots of photographs throughout. A lot are black and white. A bunch are colorized, pretty jarringly, I think. But also there are different qualities of paper used. There's the sort of, I guess, lowest quality paper, the newsprintiest paper that is for the order form that you can pull out. But that paper, is used in the back of the catalog too, because of how the catalog is, stapled together.
Right.
But I think even beyond that, there are 2 different types of paper.
I'm not really detecting what you mean by that when I flip through the catalog.
I could be wrong, I guess. Maybe it's an illusion based on the coloration of some of it.
So something that I think is notable that might give the sense that there are different types of paper involved is that depending on the saturation of the printing, so on the brightest colors, the real reds of the beets and tomatoes and the bright orange of the cantaloupes and carrots, the ink that they're using becomes matte.
Oh, okay.
And then where it's deposited more lightly, like where they're shading in a green head of lettuce or something, or even the stems of a plant that has that very saturated red, that green remains, where the green area has been printed, remains shinier.
Okay.
Anywhere that's less heavily saturated.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. It's a beautiful catalog, I think.
It is. I particularly love the cross-section of corn on page 63. I think that's a really beautiful image.
Oh, yeah. How about that? Wow, I don't think I've ever seen that before.
Yeah, I mean, it's these layers of red and yellow ink that are built up, as well as a black layer. And it just gives this, it's really hard to describe. It gives this sense of depth and transparency.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, a lot of catalogs will show like a cross-section of a tomato, so you can see the flesh to gel ratio, but like a real zoomed in cross-section of basically any vegetable would be useful. Yeah, you're right. Some of the I'm looking at the colorized tomatoes on pages 36 and 37. They're so vibrantly colorized that they do have a sense of being like matte. Like instead of it being a photograph of a tomato, it looks like a cartoon of a tomato or something like that.
Why don't we read some corn first?
Okay.
Why don't you read Schell's Big Yellow?
Schell's Big Yellow. Biggest ear and biggest grain. Farmer friends, we again have a grand crop of good seed for you, and it germinates 100%, but the crop is short. Schell's Big Yellow was originally bred from improved Leeming and Golden Dent. From these 2 good standard varieties, it received its first good points of value. From improved Leeming, it inherited the length of grain and the broad, rich foliage of the fodder. From the Golden Dent, it inherited the broadness of its grain, the larger number of rows of grains, and the very beautiful rich golden yellow color. It produces a crop of the most perfectly uniform ears and has averaged 81 bushels of shelled corn per acre, which is almost twice as much as the average yield of other varieties as given by the Department of Agriculture, which average is but 40.3 bushels per acre. Why not grow twice as many bushels to each acre and double your profits? Schell's Big Yellow is a big corn, and big and corn are capitalized as though that's a thing. Schell's Big Yellow is a big corn, yet matures in 110 days. The ears are immense, 12 to 14 inches long, with 20 to 24 rows of long, broad grains. It is without question one of the most valuable yellow dent corns ever produced because of its immense yield. At least 50% and often 100% greater numbers of bushels to the acre than any of the average yields of other varieties. The stalks grow from 12 to 15 feet high, giving an immense quantity of fodder heavily covered with big, broad leaves. If you want the biggest and best crop in the neighborhood, then grow Schell's Big Yellow Dent. Planted in May and it will mature in September. Remember, it takes no more seed, no more work in preparing the land, planting and cultivating to grow a big crop of Schell's Big Yellow Dent than it does to grow a crop of common corn.
Common corn.
Common corn. Wow, they use the word immense 3 times in like the first 4 sentences of that paragraph.
Not to distract from this because it is great, but on the facing page, there's a listing for something called Wizard Brand Sheep Manure, which I just sort of love.
Real predator urine, you may remember from several episodes again.
I'd like to read Schell's 90-day seed corn as well. Schell's 90-day seed corn.
This is the one for which there's a cross-section, I believe.
Yes, there's an arrow pointing to the cross-section image. After all, the real purpose in planting corn is to get corn.
Wow. That's a tautological, like, I don't know, there's something philosophical about that to me.
After all, the real purpose in planting corn is to get corn. All we can get of it. Not cobs, not fodder, but corn. Those golden rows of corn, which surround the cob. And
as Allison has been reading all of this, she's been sort of accenting words that are in bold in the text. When
bold
she says,
and capitalized generally.
Yeah.
Like corn is either all caps or it's corn with a capital C. And in all cases, bold here. With this variety, you gain 7 pounds per bushel, or 700 pounds to each 100 bushels, and 50 acres, averaging 100 bushels of ears, would mean 35,000 pounds or more actual corn, or about 630 bushels gain. Every 70-pound bushel of ears makes 63 pounds of shelled corn, while other varieties only make 56 pounds shelled corn to the bushel, so you gain 7 pounds on every bushel of ears. Its great value is in its earliness and the tremendous quantity of shelled corn it produces. The fodder grows 8 to 10 feet high. You can plant this closer than the average and thus increase the yield. Ears average 10 inches long with 16 rows of rich, dark yellow grains. Much preferred by millers, who are ready to pay more for it. Do not delay sending your order, for the demand this year will be as great as ever. Our tests of this variety will average 98 to 100%. Wow, that was a lot of corn math.
Yeah, like, I think we've come to sort of a societal consensus on advertising at this point where everyone agrees there's nothing to be gained by saying, like, it'll be 63 instead of 57, right? Like, you just say it's more, and that's enough, right?
Well, as it turns out, innumeracy is one of our great downfalls, as I think is illustrated by the number of people who are saying, only a 1% chance of dying. Let me at it. I can't wait to get infected. I love it.
Yeah, we were
1%. That's like nothing.
Yeah, we were talking about this the other day. I mean, that's like, along with it's just a flu, the most common thing that you would hear a moron say at the beginning of this pandemic was, Only a fucking 1% chance of dying? Fuck, that's like nothing. That's so much.
If you had a 1% chance of dying from... Oh my God. All right. Anyway. And it's also like extremely context specific, right? Like if a doctor told you, you have cancer, but the good news is that this particular cancer has a 99% survival rate.
Sure.
You would be feeling a lot better than if they
said...
a lot
of relief.
Right. I mean, of cancer, sure, 1%, you're going to feel pretty good about that. But just like existing for some interval of time to have
this disease, which
everyone will let everyone
get it. Our society is going to take no steps to prevent us from all getting it twice a year for the rest of our lives with a 1% chance of dying each time.
Jesus fucking Christ. Yeah. All right. Well, anyway. Oh, also the innumeracy of people screaming, you know, not to defend Nate Silver or anything, but his prediction that, you know, Donald Trump had a 25% chance of winning the election, and then Donald Trump did win, and people were like, I can't believe this moron didn't know. Like, well, 25% chance of something happening is pretty good. It's pretty good odds. I wasn't feeling great about those odds, but apparently everyone else was. So
fucking snake eyes.
Anyway, I think it would be a better world if everyone could hear that you get 63 pounds of corn instead of 57 and think, all right, I'm sold.
But you need to be able to like...
Corn.
You need to be able to like visualize that, right? Part of the reason why we are not as upset about... This is another, you know, I guess innumeracy as you frame it, but like we're not as upset about billionaires as we should be because we don't understand what a billion,
how big a billion is.
Big a billion is, right? But I think it's that, I mean, even the difference between 63 and 56 pounds of shelled corn is not, we're not capable of bringing that. Maybe if you're a farmer, you're capable of bringing that to mind.
Listen, dumbass, the point of growing corn is to get corn. It's about the corn.
I don't know. Here's a hot take. Here's a hot take.
Corn.
Here's a hot take. I think it's about the cob.
Whoa.
I think it's about the cob. You want a good, robust cob.
Well, as a corn cob pipe manufacturer.
Or as a person who likes to put things in their butt, what I care about is the shape and stability of the cob.
I do like the idea of this being on Twitter and someone actuallying them. Like, I grow corn not to get corn, and here's why.
Yeah.
New York Times pitch bot.
I'm a real fodder pervert. All right, we'll read one more corn before we get out of here. How about Schell's hybrid US-13?
Do you want to read it?
Sure. Schell's hybrid US-13. Look at those beautiful big golden ears. They have 20 or 22 rows of good deep grains. Here is, without question, a most outstanding and most valuable hybrid. Every farmer who grew it is tremendously enthusiastic about it, for it has everything to be desired. Large ears, deep grains, good big stalks with broad leaves, sturdy and disease resistant. Just the kind of a hybrid you have been wanting. It is a mid-season sort, maturing between the early and the late varieties. Matures normally in central Pennsylvania, in some equally low sections in northern half, and in states south and west. You will be thrilled with your crop of this very fine hybrid. We recommend it very highly. Boy, catalogs from this time would never say in 5 words what they could say in 20 words, I really think. It is a mid-season sort, maturing between the early and late varieties.
Yeah, that's...
Just fucking like to hear themselves talk, I guess. I don't know. I bet every one of these descriptions was written by Walter S. Schell.
Could be.
I mean, it's just...
Should we start taking our anti-nuke liquids?
Do we even have air raid sirens here?
No idea.
Yeah, you always hear about fucking air raid.
Probably not.
We always hear about air raid sirens going off in every city that is under siege. But I don't think St. Augustine Beach has air raid sirens.
I doubt
We are
it.
not going to know that we've been nuked until, I guess, my skin starts to blister. All right, well, before we go, you wanted to tell me about a new plant organ that just dropped.
Hell yeah.
What's going on?
Well, this paper actually came out in June of 2021, but I didn't notice it because I'm actually not a plant biologist. So I
Wow,
don't
what a
usually
fraud.
I don't stay up to date really on the plant literature.
Yeah.
But as it turns out, a new organ has been described in Arabidopsis. So Arabidopsis, and specifically a strain of Arabidopsis thaliana, has been that's kind of the lab model plant. Like that's the lab rat of plants.
Oh, know that.
So there are many, many labs
it's
that work
easy
on
to
this particular
keep alive.
plant. Yeah, it's easy to grow in a small space. It's also one of those things. Model organisms are, the more tools you have for a particular species, the more new kinds of experiments people can do with that species. So there's a kind of a virtuous cycle, I guess you might call it, where, because fruit flies have been really well developed for developmental genetics, then there are more tools that you can deploy in fruit flies because you've got all these strains that have different phenotypes, whatever. So the more tools there are to use something, the more appealing it becomes to use. And that's a self-reinforcing thing. What this paper describes is that there's actually an organ that only forms under certain environmental conditions in Arabidopsis. And in particular, the lab strain that everyone likes to grow, for various reasons, it's become the dominant lab strain. And one of those reasons is that it grows very neatly erect. So it grows straight up. The plants don't get tangled with one another when you're growing lots of them. It turns out that the mutation that causes them to grow uniformly like that means that they cannot grow this particular organ. So they had to, they discovered in another strain of Arabidopsis that doesn't have this particular mutation that under certain day length conditions, which we've talked about before, so that's like the ratio of nighttime to daytime, they grow this structure that they're calling a cantle, because it cantilevers out from the stem, like basically where the flowers start to grow. And instead of, the stem having just one little branch and then the flower, like the inflorescence appears on that.
Yeah.
It's like a thing that comes straight out from the stem. And then the pedicel, which bears the flower, grows at sort of a right angle to that.
Oh, weird.
So instead of the pedicel being directly attached to the stem, there's an intervening thing that's sort of making a 90-degree angle between stem and pedicel. And I just thought it was kind of a neat little story because this is like literally the most studied plant in the world.
Right. But
and
because
it had
of
a
the
whole
thing that
organ.
makes it studyable in the lab, it couldn't have had this thing.
Yeah.
So where was it observed? Not in the lab? Was it observed in a wild variety of it?
So I don't know the story behind this paper in terms of the real story, right? There's always sort of a storytelling that you, But like, why was this, again, not being part of the plant biology community? I don't really know why people were interested in studying other strains of Arabidopsis. I mean, it makes sense, right? You want to branch out and not just focus on one extremely narrow thing.
Wow, imagine discovering a whole new organ. Allison, I've discovered that my dick doesn't just come out of my body. There's another thing that comes out of my body, and then my dick grows at a right angle up from that.
Congratulations. Yeah, but anyway, the point is that in wild type Arabidopsis, under certain lighting conditions, this organ forms. And so the flowers grow in sort of a different way than they normally would. And what's still unknown, this paper, they try to describe some of the gene regulatory network that enables this cantle to grow. But it's currently totally unknown whether this is somehow adaptive. So like it grows this way under certain conditions because it confers an advantage of some sort, or if it just arises as a sort of
Offshoot of
side
something
product.
else.
Yeah. a side effect of some other effect of day length exposure.
Awesome. All right. Well, if you're so inclined, you can elect to follow us on Twitter at @cdbusiness or on Instagram at cdbusinesspod. You could email us at cdbusinesspod@gmail.com. Let us know if you want us to talk about a particular catalog. Thank you, Kim, for this week's catalog. Leave us a review. We'll certainly read it. And assuming they contain novel organs that are delicious, you should eat your vegetables.
We're all just doing the best we can.
Speak for yourself.
It's city business. It's city business. Boring talk about seeds, city talk between boys. Mind-numbing chatter about ovules and spores. We'll dig a ditch and moan and split the difference. City business.